But I want to go over into the immigration police state and a little bit about what is very, very strange when it comes to the visas and passports of people. Let me make sure I got this. It's the last one down here. The U.S. is getting involved in pressuring divorced parents to provide child support. The national government, how are they doing it? They're going to either revoke or not allow them to get passports. So again, regardless of how one feels about parental support for kids, like that's my business, why is the United States involved with saying that they are going to revoke the passports of non-custodial parents who aren't supporting their children? In 1975, the Child Support Program was enacted in the United States to so-called reduce public spending by making sure non-custodial parents contributed financially to supporting their kids. Now, the only argument that someone could make about this is if there is a cross-state border dispute about parental support for kids, and one state was not facilitating another state's attempt to prosecute somebody. There's nothing at all that would even touch the United States having some so-called ability to be able to revoke a passport. And there is nothing in the Constitution that grants the federal government a magical power, this whole granting of power lingo, which is not actually something that the Constitution does in the first place. There's no power that anybody can legitimately claim over another person. But under their constitutional rules, the passport paradigm isn't part of it. You think Benjamin Franklin had to have a passport when he wanted to go over to the Hellfire Club? Thomas Jefferson traveling around? Thomas Paine? In 2023, the most recent year for which data is available, these are just fundamental questions. People have to break down these shibboleths. Passports are unconstitutional, period. There's no arguing it. It's silly even to try. It's sort of like arguing about Raggedy Ann and Andy being real. In 2023, the most recent year for which data is available, 25.7 billion in child support was collected from parents and transferred to those receiving support, according to a March 2025 Congressional Research Service report. Okay, why are they researching that? Again, where in the Constitution do they have some power to research how parents are supporting their kids? Is that at all ever questioned by people? Or do they just assume, well, maybe they spent too much on this program, or I don't know, maybe the numbers aren't right. No, how about not collecting the frigging numbers? Because in order to do so, somebody had to pay for it. That would be your kids, because they're $40 trillion in debt. Talk about being in arrears. In total, 65% of all payments that were due were collected. Unfortunately, this means a substantial amount of child support payments aren't being made. So you see the way they're setting you up? Like this is going to rectify a problem. The government's fixing something. While there are many enforcement mechanisms to make parents pay, including programs that collect the money directly from employers before wages are sent to workers, there's now a new threat looming over parents who don't cover their kids. They could lose their passports. On Thursday, May 7th, the U.S. State Department told the AP that it would begin revoking passports for parents who owe at least $100,000 in unpaid child support, effective as of Friday, May 8th. This initial enforcement effort will affect around 2,700 holders of U.S. passports, but it is just the beginning of the crackdown. Soon, the revocation program will expand to any parents who owe $2,000, $2,500 or more, according to the AP. This threshold was set by a 1996 federal law that has not been really enforced up to this point. Does anybody question this stuff? Like, where do they get off doing this? what a passport revocation entails. The State Department is also making another big change. While previously passport renewal was typically denied to those who owed support, now the United States Department of Health and Human Services is proactively reporting data on parents with past due balances to the State Department. How is it that they can get that information? Again, unless they've crossed state borders and there's an attempt to extradite and the other state is not welcome to that attempt, the federal government shouldn't have any of this information at all. At all, ever. This is just prima facie, flat out, jaw-droppingly unconstitutional. And if people aren't disgusted and disturbed by this, I don't know how they function. Because if they vote, this is part of the deal. You're voting to make sure this stuff doesn't happen. But it does. So if you're voting and the people you vote for do this stuff, stop voting. You're a problem. Get out of the booth. It's a dangerous place. You're hurting people. Quote, we are expanding a common sense practice that has been proven effective at getting those who owe child support to pay their debt. Assistant Secretary of State for Consular Affairs, Maura Namdar, told the United States press, the Associated Press. Maura Namdar sounds like some sort of steel manufacturer. Well, I got a new job. What are you doing? I'm in the finishing section of Namdar Corp. Cool, man. You working with acids? Yeah. I'm working with acids right now. Yeah, it's pretty good stuff. Dangerous, but it's Namdar Corp, so it's okay. Now let me give you this. Yes, the main story. And then we're going to go to a little Mark Wayne Mullen action because life is just not complete without some Mark Wayne Mullen because he's just so rocking. Oh, look, former wives, like I said, plural now. Former wives say ICE failed to vet officer in fatal Maine shooting despite years of warnings about racist, violent behavior. Multiple. Again, it shouldn't matter what the guy's background is. Because all the other agents who don't have that dark background, they're not supposed to be there either. So then you can end it and you don't have to think about this stuff. They're not supposed to be hiring this guy. And of course, some people in the collective might want a real tough guy to go after these foreigners. Maybe not to the point of killing them. Maybe they might stop there. But again, there's this sort of weird, latent idea that the people who are the so-called illegal aliens somehow deserve what they get. They leave themselves vulnerable to this because they made the decision to flout the American rules. Whereas this guy, by the way, had a work permit. He was here legally. He was on his way to work. And as we know, Joe Biden, although many of the conservatives hate this fact, opened the spigot to legally allow tens of thousands of people per year to come in while he was president. They all came in under the auspices and consideration that they were legally coming in. Now, armed goons are hunting them down. I wonder if that happened in their home countries. And don't forget, the Iranians who came over here, supposedly for sanctuary, the government wants to send them back to that evil, evil, evil place called Iran. Because Iran is so evil that you got to make sure the people who escaped it, that Donald Trump says are such wonderful people and aren't part of the 800,000 people who were protesting on the streets who got killed in 5 minutes back in January. Somehow, we got to make sure those people who escaped that bloodbath of 50 million people being killed by the Iranians that month. I don't know how much bigger it's going to be the next time I mention the number, but I'm just following Trump's pattern. We got to make sure that we send them back to that place because it's so evil. In interviews with The Independent, Ashley Brouillette, the officer's first ex-wife. Remember last week, we just thought she was the only ex-wife? Well, it turns out there was another one, Lucinda. So there's Ashley. She said she had long feared David Brouillette would seriously harm someone and believes that the July 13th shooting could have been 100% preventable. She said investigators never reached out to her before Brouillette joined the agency. A second wife, Lucinda, also told the news site that she had warned authorities over the years about what she described as a pattern of abuse, intimidation, and escalating aggression. Sort of like the United States internationally. There you go. Now, let's get to another charmer. So we've got this. Colorado, an off-duty ICE goon actually employed by Geo Group is accused of shooting a protester over the weekend. There you go, because there's nothing better than that. That's cool stuff. AOC is there hanging out, looking stylish. An off-duty employee of ICE in an ICE detention center in Aurora, Colorado, was arrested Thursday after allegedly shooting a protester. The arrest follows a string of high-profile incidents across the country involving immigration officials firing on members of the public. Brandon Booth, 42, not Douglas Adams' favorite number in this case, an employee of the government contractor Geo Group, was allegedly waiting in his vehicle with coworkers near the privately run Aurora ICE Processing Center on Thursday night after protesters impeded their ability to start work at the 1,500-bed detention center. So maybe that's sort of like a story of an SS trooper shooting a local person who didn't like the fact that they had put a concentration camp in their neighborhood. I'm just wondering. Oh, look, what's this? Trump's border goon squirms. Hey, is that about Tom Homan? He's my favorite. I want baseball cards with him. Yeah. Border czar Tom Homan has admitted there may have been an issue in the fatal ICE shooting of a man in Houston. You know, people are protesting about it because maybe the guy shouldn't be dead. Homan, who acknowledged that he hasn't seen footage of ICE agents fatally shooting 52-year-old Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Houston, initially scoffed at concerns that the federal agents use an unmarked vehicle and that their use of it may have contributed to the fatal encounter. Oh, you mean that the Trumpers have argued they shouldn't have to identify themselves? They can wear masks. They can go in unmarked cars. Let's see.
No, they have emergency lights. Officers have insignia, so when they get out of that car and approach the car, you can clearly see the law enforcement officers.
Well, in the video that has been public, it's not a marked car.
These people, I'm not saying it's a marked car, but they have emergency lights and sirens. So when they pull somewhere, they want to activate the emergency lights. A lot of police departments. I'm in New York City right now. A lot of NYPD officers are driving.
So let's just find out, even if they were marked, even if they had their names and IDs on them, does that make it any better? No, of course not. But this man is dead. His family mourns him. And yes, he was legal too, as the so-called saying goes. Now, tied to that, a lot of bluster, but no one will get to the root of the problem, that being the unconstitutional federal claim over immigration policing. Here's a headline. Lawmakers, as they call them, demand answers after bombshell report about ICE officer shooting in Maine. So here's a little bit that we see. This is from Friday. Democrat members of Congress are demanding answers about Homeland Security's vetting and training of immigration enforcement agents, but they won't get to the root of it. Again, you're never going to get away from this stuff because they're claiming the power to assault people. And then they're claiming self-defense, and then they become armed. So whether these guys are bloodthirsty maniacs, as Mr. Brouillette has been described, and now he has killed someone, or it's somebody who accidentally kills someone. Someone's dead, and you can't avoid it. Now, let me get to this one. I think you might find this interesting. Elections. This is where Markwayne Mullin starts to come in. Now, first, Trump's It's China narrative is about as believable as the we want peace narrative. But we do know one national government that has tremendous pull in D.C. around the country. Oh, what's this? Yeah, Israel. This is an interesting little piece over on X. Israel is laundering money through a myriad of companies in order to interfere in U.S. elections. Israel to Havas Media, to Clock Tower X, to Sparkfire Tech, to Friends for Peace, to Arizona election interference. Check this out.
AG complaint filed. Israel interfering in U.S. elections through Brad Parscale. By Gen X Girl 1994. Complaint filed with the Arizona Attorney General states Israel is interfering in U.S. elections through Brad Parscale's FARA-registered Clock Tower X. Per the Federal Election Campaign Act, foreign nationals and their agents are banned from participating in U.S. elections. In June, Kai Newkirk, a candidate for the House of Representatives in Arizona's 4th District, filed a foreign election interference complaint with Arizona's Attorney General against Brad Parscale's Clock Tower X. Brad Parscale and his company, Clock Tower X, are FARA-registered Israel agents who receive funding and direction from Israel through an intermediary, State of Israel via Havas Media Germany GmbH, to propagandize America via digital campaigns encompassing AI, chatbots, texts, and social media.
All right, so I just want to pause it there. Now, it would be one thing, again, if private individuals or people working with businesses internationally wanted to try to fund something and put out a message somewhere. But you can see the squirrely way these people do this. And then they get Donald Trump to push this narrative that it's China, that it's TikTok, that it's all these things. Well, they've been doing this for years, right? It's the hypocrisy that really gets me about this stuff. But there is another facet to this, and it has to do with the pressure that Markwayne Mullin is putting on the states to have to accept not just the SAVE Act, but more than that. So the final thing I want to give to you in tonight's program is this. This is, I've written this. Regardless of whether the act passes, the SAVE Act, the Trumpers are trying to leverage so-called Homeland Security funds. And of course, have you seen that in Article 8000 of the Constitution? And then again, how about on a deeper level, the problem of government defining for you what your security is in the whole Homeland Security funds idea? Well, they're threatening the states with Homeland Security funds or no Homeland Security funds to make the state governments run elections the way that the feds demand. And you probably have heard about this, but I wanted to amplify on this because there was something, a shard of something that came into my my vision today on the news stories I was watching. It's like, this is something I got to bring to you. As we noted last week on Liberty Conspiracy Live, federal commands to make the states handle the choosing, and I wrote that the way it's written in the Constitution, CHUSING, of their electors for the presidential contests would be unconstitutional. So again, a lot of words. We don't want this to just become a jumble of words for you if you're watching, listening. As we noted last week, federal commands to make the states handle the choosing of their electors for the presidential contests would be unconstitutional. So that part of the SAVE Act clearly doesn't comport with the Constitution, because the Constitution says that the manner of choosing with a U, CHUSING, the electors is up to the states. The process for state operations for congressional and Senate elections can be influenced by the central government. Therefore, the SAVE Act would be half unconstitutional. But if the feds can threaten, as you'll see in this article, can threaten to withhold federal pork, as in Homeland Security money, then they might be able to get the states to comply with their demands as if it is a state that isn't under duress, right? As if they're doing it through their own volition in order to get this money. DHS head goon Markwayne Mullin also is threatening to so-called investigate the voter rolls after elections in those states that don't comply. Now, unless someone brings a complaint, how is it that the Justice Department can investigate and try to bring cases? No one has claimed harm, right? Now, they'll probably easily get someone to try to make a complaint, but he can't proactively say, we're going to investigate if the voter rolls after elections aren't shown to us and you don't comply to what we want. Now, what do they want to make sure that the states do? Well, they want to make sure that only American citizens vote. Let me show you something. I said, here's an interesting, alarming article on the Mullin push. Jaws drop as DHS chief threatens to jail state office officials who defied Trump's midterm election plan. Seriously. During a press conference Friday, Homeland Security Secretary and absolutely calm, not violent man in any way, Markwayne Mullin, openly threatened to jail state officials who refused to cooperate with the Trump administration's midterm election security program this fall, leaving a number of critics stunned over the blatant admission. Mullin's admission came just one day after President Trump's national address on supposed election security shortcomings. So, it was all a setup to open up the gates for these people to come in with the next notes in this song. And amid the Trump administration's ongoing push to exert more control over the midterm elections, which include efforts to seize states' voter registration data through threats of withholding federal funds earmarked for disaster preparedness, among other things. Again, disasters, not part of what the government should be doing on the federal level. Quote, Mullin says, if the states that choose not to participate with the program, and they choose not to participate in securing the elections, we will make sure, sorry for the phrasing, I'm just reading what is there. We will make sure that we make those states a priority to look at who voted in their states and hold them, the election officials, accountable. If the election officials, once we gave them the information they need to secure their elections, and they chose not to, then those individuals can also be held accountable by fines, by penalties, and even, depending on how far it goes, prison time. So let me just mention, a reporter who works for Jim Acosta called Mullin's remarks naked intimidation. That's absolutely right. And I mentioned this. I did some digging, and states and officials that refuse to participate in the so-called SAVE Act or adopt the measures will have those. They'll see that their states will be prioritized for federal investigation into who voted and whether ineligible ballots were issued. Mullin stated that non-compliant states will face heightened security and election officials could be held accountable through investigations, fines, or prosecution if non-citizens are found to have voted in their jurisdictions. Now, there's a little more here, but the final shoe is going to drop in a second. Explicit warnings include pursuing maximum charges against illegal voters. We will hunt you down, we will find you, and we will prosecute you. And extending accountability to officials who issue ballots to ineligible voters. Again, for president, the states are supposed to be free to set up their own ways of choosing their electors. And this is the final shoe. Because immigration isn't a federal issue, and the states get to choose the method of choosing their electors, states literally could allow non-citizens to vote. And that would be constitutional. You can look it up. Now, there are statutes on the federal level that say they can't, but they could constitutionally, unless there's an amendment. Potential penalties referenced in this context from Markwayne Mullin: fines and prison time that could carry up to 5 years in prison. And 20% of relevant Homeland Security grants will be withheld unless compliance is proven. So again, if you want to check it out, the choosing of the electors is up to the states. The states, for presidential votes, could allow foreigners who are living in their states to vote for president, and they could be counted. And there's nothing anybody who wants to say anything about the Constitution could say to stop it unless they amend the Constitution. I don't have an opinion on it one way or the other because I don't vote to fill the offices. I'm just saying what is in the Constitution. That's all. That's it. So a lot of the, the anti-immigrant people are real ticked off by hearing that. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm telling you 2 + 2 is 4. But if you don't like it, don't skirt the Constitution and say that foreigners can't vote in states if states do want to allow them to vote, because states right now, without an amendment to the federal Constitution, have that prerogative, and you can't stop it unless you get enough people to pass an amendment. Sorry.